It was something they said or it's something they didn't say. And that's all about language. If we don't tell our partner that we love them every single day and we don't do that for 6 months, how do they know that we love them? Hi guys, it's JT here and welcome to the JT Leadership Podcast, brought to you by PMG, a podcast where I take everyday leadership challenges, simplify them and provide you with the tools that have worked for me and hundreds of other leaders in the world, all with one outcome. This podcast has one outcome, and that is to have a positive impact on you so that you can have a positive impact on your life and the world. So why listen to me? Why listen to this podcast? So as I mentioned in my previous episodes, I've spent the last 10 years learning, developing, extracting information from my life experiences and other great leaders. And I hope that even if you just take away one element from this podcast or one from my other episodes, it can make a difference in your life. So without further ado, let's get into episode 5, the power of language and listening. I feel like these are two incredibly important areas as a leader. They can have such a profound impact on our lives and other people's lives. So in this episode, I'm going to be focusing on 4 questions. Question 1, why is language and listening important? Question 2, how to change your language? Question 3, how to become a better listener? And question 4, what is the trust equation? Now question 4, you're going to want to stay around to listen for that, because question 4, the trust equation, is something that I've applied to my life every single day, and it has a huge impact. It's helped me connect better with people, and it's helped me build stronger, more positive relationships, ultimately bringing in more success. So I want to get into listening, and why is listening so important? In my experience, listening ultimately has 2 main benefits. 1, it makes people feel valued, and 2, it makes us more informed to make better decisions. So what do I mean by making people feel valued? So Simon Sinek, he's a brilliant leadership speaker. He reminds us of the story from Nelson Mandela's autobiography. Nelson Mandela tells us of a story about his father and how he used to run his chief council. His father used to have a table where all his council members would sit around the table and they would talk first. They would go one by one and they'd go around the table saying their opinion. His father would listen. He would listen to what they're saying, and then he would make his decision. Think of it this way. There are over 7 billion people on this planet, and every single one of us is unique, has our own opinions, own views. That's just incredible. But whenever do we listen to other people? How often are we listened to? If you was to ask yourself this question, when you go into work, how often does someone stop and actually listen to what you're saying? Going back to the story of Nelson Mandela's father, when he stopped and listened to what other people were saying, they feel valued. It makes them feel valued. You show them respect and they are showing you respect back. This creates trust because they can trust in your decision. A decision, like I was saying before, I'm going to go back to this, where it is more informed because you've been listening to your support network. As leaders, drawing on support of others is an incredibly important behavior. Take, for example, political leaders. There is one candidate who is seen as the leader, but that candidate does not do everything by themselves. Their campaign is supported by an entire team. The campaign leader listens to what his team is saying. They draw on experience, draw on support, also that they can have a more positive impact. And this is why listening is so important. It allows us to make informed decisions and also allows us to make people feel valued, ultimately creating trust. So what about language? Well, the language we use changes how people perceive us as a leader and as a person. The language we use affects whether people trust us or not. Now I want to tell you a story about language. I want to go back to a point in my life where I knew a good friend of mine, and he was married to his wife and they were madly in love. However, there was always an element of distrust. Whenever one of them went out, whenever they went on holiday, there was an element of distrust. And after years of this, they managed to work through it and actually became stronger at the end of it. But when we actually spoke about why they feel like they distrust each other, it was always came down to language. It was something they said or something they didn't say. And that's all about language. If we don't tell our partner that we love them every single day, and we don't do that for 6 months, how do they know that we love them? Do you then start to disconnect? And I've seen that many times. I've seen it happen a lot. The language we use can either destroy, discourage, devalue people, but it can also motivate, support, and include people. It is our choice, our moral duty as leaders, and not just as leaders, but as a people, to use the right language, to use language that inspires people, motivate people, and motivate ourselves. For example, if I'm trying to motivate myself to go to the gym every single day, and if I said to myself, yeah, I should go to the gym, I'm giving myself a way out. When I tell myself I am going to the gym, I must go to the gym, I'm not giving myself any excuses. That's all in the language that we choose to use. Okay, so now we know the power of listening and language. So how do you go about changing your language? So remember what I said at the beginning. The choice of our language creates trust. And there is 3 parts to language which can actually create trust. Number 1, positivity. Number 2, inclusiveness. And number 3, clarity. I'm going to repeat that, and I want you to take a note of that. There are 3 parts on how you can change your language to have a more positive impact. Part 1, positivity. Part 2, inclusiveness. And part 3, clarity. So I want to look at part 1, positivity. Emails, texts, social media. Something that's used every single day today. And it's something that can seem emotionless, cold. It's over the internet. It's through a screen. But studies show that these communications can be perceived in the same way as a face-to-face communication. Dale Carnegie and Associates, in the incredible book, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age, by the way, that's a must-read book, so one might want to take a note of that. They talk about how writing or speaking with a smile, displaying positivity, can hugely change the way our language is perceived. So I want you to try it now. If you're in the car, if you're on the train, if you're at work, you're going for a run, I want you to look up and smile. If someone's facing you, you might get a smile back. If you're in the car, just smiling to yourself, it'll actually make you feel better. If you're running and you're smiling to yourself, it'll give you more energy. Positivity breeds positivity. Positivity makes it difficult for us to think negative. And positivity builds trust. Which brings me on to part 2, inclusiveness. So according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, every person has a need to belong. So what I was talking about at the beginning, every person, 7 billion of us on the planet, every single one of us needs to feel valued. We all need to feel valued and important to ourselves and important to someone else. We are social creatures. John Gray, the famous relationship therapist, speaking at TEDxBren in 2004, said one of the main reasons men slip into depression is because they do not feel important or valued anymore. They do not feel like they're making an impact in someone's lives. A leader understands that people perform their best when they feel valued. If you don't believe me, I've got some facts for you here. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, wrote to investors in 2019 as normal, as he normally would. But out of 1,361 words, Tim Cook used the word I once. In the same letter, Tim Cook used the word we 44 times. Martin Luther King, in his I Have a Dream speech, used the word we 35 times. Oprah Winfrey, speaking at her Golden Globes Award ceremony speech, used the word we 15 times. Every single one of these great leaders understood that inclusiveness makes people feel valued, and that builds trust. It builds a feeling of importance, but most importantly, trust. Which brings me on to the 3rd part, clarity. So with clarity, this is exactly how we communicate with each other. This is giving us our purpose. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on clarity, but I suggest going back to episode 1, the power of communication, where I go into great detail about how to become a better communicator. But the tips I give you for this episode, make sure you focus on clear statements. Like I said earlier about forcing myself to go to the gym, I don't use words such as I should. I say I must, I will do. Take out the grey area. And in episode 1, I shared with you the secrets to powerful communication. So I'm going to move on to the next part, how to become a better listener. So for question 1, I explained to you the benefits of becoming a better listener. It makes people feel valued. It gives you more information so you become better informed and you will see results. You will see better success. But there are 4 things that you can start doing right now to become a better listener. So I want you to take notes of these. The first way is to be open. Don't feel like you just know it all. I've been there. I used to think that. I used to be one of those people who used to think, yeah, I know everything, everyone else is actually talking nonsense. But the feedback that I got was that I need to become a better listener. So I did. It was something that I wasn't great at, so I focused on it. So being open is important. The second tool, close your mouth. Just stop talking. Stop talking and listen. When we close our mouth and start listening, it creates a powerful shift in people, in particular the people we are trying to lead. That could be ourselves or other people. We give them an opportunity to make their voice heard, and this makes people feel valued. The third tool, be present, be there, actively listen. And the fourth tool is be attentive. Listen to what they're saying. If what they're saying has quite dark energy behind it, don't sit there with a smile on your face. That's just obvious. If they're quite positive, quite upbeat, be there, enjoy it, feel that joy and happiness, smile back. And remember that leadership is more about other people than it is about you. Okay, so we've covered a lot there. So I just want to quickly go recap back to the questions and close out what we've answered. So question 1, why is language and listening important? So we've done that. We've answered that question and I hope you've taken notes. How to change your language, how to become a better listener. So we've answered now questions 1 to 3. But ultimately, what does the power of language and listening give you? It gives you trust with other people. Take note of that. Language, our positive language, our inclusive language, our clear language, and our ability to attentively and openly listen gives us trust. It creates trust with other people. That brings me on to question 4. What is the trust equation? So if you've got a pen or paper, your laptop, your phone, take a note of this. If you're running, come back and listen to this later. This is the trust equation. Trust equals positivity plus inclusiveness plus clarity. Remember it this way. Trust equals pick. So for example, if you was to score a relationship with someone out of 10 and the way you use your language and the way you listen to them. So for example, positivity. If you was very positive, the language you used with that person was a 10 and you've made them feel inclusive. You use inclusive language like we and us and it's an 8 or a 9. And then you was also very clear. So go back to episode 1, you spoke about how, why, what, when, and you might have scored yourself an 8. Your score would be somewhere around 27, 28. It would be a really high score. The trust levels would be really high. On the flip side, if you didn't do all that, and your scores were around 2s, 1s, and a 3, you'll have a very low trust rating. So I recommend you do that exercise. If you're a leader of your team, or you want to look at the trust levels within a relationship, openly and honestly score yourself. Is it a positive relationship? Do you make your team feel included? Are you clear and concise in your language and your listening? If you've got a really high score, great, fantastic, keep working on it. If you've got a really low score, then you want to look at changing your language, changing the way you listen. But most importantly, there is one element that I haven't mentioned yet, and no matter how high your score or how low your score, this is one thing that will destroy trust altogether, and that is your ego. If you are an egotistical person, an egotistical leader, the language you use will not be positive because it would be all about you. You will not be using inclusive language because you'll be using words like I, me, me, me. You won't be clear and concise in what you're saying because ultimately when someone fails, it'll be a blame game. And if you are an egotistical person, your ears are closed and your mouth is always opening, so you will not be listening to people. So again, I recommend that you try and go through that equation, the trust equation, and score yourself. But identify, do you have an ego? Are your scores low because of your ego? If it is, then that's something you can work on. Okay, wow, so we've covered so much today. There's a lot of tools, tips, and value in there. So I just want to quickly summarize on what we've discussed today. So remember, focus on the equation. Trust equals positivity plus inclusiveness plus clarity. That's all in the language that you use. And then listening. Listening makes people feel valued. And when you make people feel valued, they trust you more. Trust is key in leadership. And in episode 7, I will be discussing the power of connections and trust. Wow, so that brings us to the end of our episode. We've covered so much today. And I feel privileged that you have taken the time to listen to episode 5 of the JT Leadership Podcast, The Power of Language and Listening. I hope that what I've shared with you today will go on to have a positive impact in your life so that you can make a difference and a positive impact in someone else's life. If you've been listening to the season so far, thank you so much. I hope you're really enjoying the content and the value. I look forward to speaking to you in episode 6. the power of presence and authenticity. Thank you very much for listening. This is JT signing out.